I quite like that.
Yeah, I like the sea shanty. We're all aboard.
I just said it reminds me of a Salty Sea Dog pub in Weymouth. Last seen brawling.
Nice to be back and see you again, Chris.
Yes. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Been enjoying the off season, but as we head into July, it's time to get the ship going again, isn't it?
Get this shit going. We've got to look about. We've got a little touch on last season though to start with, haven't we?
Oh, of course, yeah. We both seem to have got.
We both seem to have a trophy from. Is it merch? Is it FPL merch?
FPL merch, yeah. Shout
FPL
out to
merch, yeah. Have a look at those.
You won the Content Creators League from Louis, right? FPL.
That's right.
I've got my Rockstar also. I was just gonna put it here for Andy. I know next season he's gonna be coming for me.
And I also won a lovely medal as well from FPL Medals. Look, that's FPL nice. Expectations prize as well. Very nice.
I like that.
Thank you very much to Craig and the gang there for sending that across to Singapore. I have been costing quite a lot of people some postage, right?
That's for sure. I have something coming your way, which I'll talk about when we do the Minileague update. But before we get there, I just thought for the podcast listeners, we should say like this is obviously season 3 of Net That Haul, second full season, baby. So that's exciting. Here we are with episode 1 of the preseason. We have 6 episodes planned for everyone. We're going to start with a little review of how last season ended because we didn't get around to that last year. But before we do any of that, let's definitely continue with more gloating and more trophy-wear if you have anything else to show. Do you have anything else?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've got a bit of an axe to grind because there's this thing on Twitter where it says about all these content creators and everyone's retweeting it. I'm nowhere to be seen. And I won the flaming thing.
Yeah, so that's FPL Mate's channel, Dan's content creator league.
I might be falling out with Dan again.
Yeah, no, we'll get you into these content creator leagues next season. It seems criminal that you would finish 100 and was it 22nd? And
122.
I guess no content creator wants to admit that there's another content creator out there that finished above them. I know I don't.
Look, it doesn't matter. It's all history now, isn't it? So I think this is a challenge now, is trying to carry it on. And just to let you know, obviously, Gabe should be here, but Gabe's actually up in the mountains somewhere. Was contemplating driving back to Phoenix 2 hours to do the show, then tried to set up from wherever he's staying, and now he can't get his computer connected. So even though we've seen him in the back of the chat, he's now vanished. So hopefully Gabe will be with us, won't he, Nima?
Yeah.
What should we do to start with? Shall we? We're going to touch on our seasons, but we want to get into the new stuff as well at some stage tonight, or this morning, should I say? But shall we first of all just have a quick look at the mini leagues? I think we've got a couple of shout outs to make, haven't we? So
yeah, let's do a mini league.
Let's put that on the screen. So there we go. So it was won by Tiger Rattigan with Template FC with 2,764 points, 12 points above me. And Vardy Boys on Twitter, I blame that entirely on Riyad Mahrez. Okay, so there's no talk of Riyad Mahrez tonight. Okay, end. Tiger, actually, bless him, has agreed to donate his prize to FPL Meets. We're raising some money for charity in Singapore, and he's donated his prize. So that was a shirt from Shirt Loot Box. So hopefully that should arrive fairly soon. And yeah, we'll get that put into for charity as well across here. And interestingly enough, Donny with Donny's Duds in third also donated his prize as well, because he already has Matt Whelan's book, FPL Obsessed. I'm waving it on here, and I've already got it sent across here. So that is also going to charity in Singapore. So thank you very much to Tiger and to Donny. Khaled, we need to get in touch with you because we still need to get you the subscription for FPL, for Fantasy Football Fix, isn't it, Nima?
Yeah, so Khaled, if you're listening, drop us a message and we'll make sure you get the annual premium membership with Fix as the prize for third place. Obviously, Chris has foregone any access to any of the top 3 prizes despite his second place finish. But before we read the kind of the other 6 in the top 10, we do finally have Gabe with us for everyone who's watching and any of the podcast listeners. He's managed to connect to the ship from the mountains.
Hello, Gabe.
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, really? Okay. So apologies if the sound isn't very good. Apparently my mic is on, but my computer doesn't want to recognize the existence of my mic. So I'm using my headsets today. But nice to see you guys. We're already crashing before we launch, huh? Typical.
Well, that's what's new.
Well, there's a new thumbnail, right? There's a new
What-
thumbnail, so there is some new stuff. We cropped poor Hibbo off the boat, so one less captain on the boat. I sent him the photo and let him know I've been given an arm back, so I had a missing arm and it's finally come back to me thanks to Hibbo going missing.
Yep, Hibbo's vanished. Bless him. We still love him, though. We still love him. Gabe, now you're here, we have to have the first philosophy of the season for everybody. So I'm going to put it on the screen and let you go with this. So, as always, we have the guy sat on the toilet looking forlorn. Tell us about it.
Well, there's a new look to the philosophy of the week, and you can see there's a lot of water there to receive everything that guy's putting through the toilet. So since we're starting so early here, we're going to begin with the this season's I think mental diarrhea. Here we go. And then it was just as we're discussing lessons learned, right? And we're looking back on our season and we're looking forward and have these hopes and dreams for the season to come. Here's a quote from, it's actually like a guy that writes a blog. It's called Invaji. He says, "Learning the art of unlearning and replacing old learning with a new learning is the true learning." And there's a lot of repetition of words there, but I think we're going to see in today's Net That Haul how we revisit old learning, try to kind of like unlearn some of the things that old learning where that didn't serve us maybe last season, replace it with new learning, and in that kind of a mix, that's how we'll evolve moving forward. So hopefully we'll get that message across in this episode.
Right. Okay. So how are we going to unlearn finishing 122nd? What am I going to do with that? Come on, explain that, please. Basically,
Okay,
I'm on a slippery slope to disaster,
2 words.
aren't I?
I have 2 words for you. Riyad Mahrez.
I hate you.
And you got to think about that every day for the next 35 days till the season starts.
I can't even drown myself in a bottle because I've been dry since the 20th of March. I'm a slip of a man. There's nothing left of me. I'm dropping to bits. Anyway, well, okay. Good. So learning the art of unlearning and replacing old learning with a new learning is the true learning. Okay. Yeah, I think I get it. Just whilst I'm trying to work this out in my head, Nima, because it's 6 o'clock in the morning here, and as you know, most of you, you two certainly know, I've been up half the night trying to find the cat. So, do you want to just say hello to a few people while I gather my thoughts on my section?
Yeah, we'll give a few shout outs. Let's do the final top 6 in the top 10 as well that we missed in the Minileague. Yeah, I think we've read out the prize winners, but just before the shout outs, there's a few other people to kind of congratulate on an incredible season. So we have Stefan F with That's What She Said upside down in 5th. We have My Team Gangsters Allardyce. Just show this off again one more time. Okay, we said Gangsters Allardyce. We're in 6th out here. Just cracked 2,700 points. Pfizer Chiefs with Brad Curry. Jack B with Ticking Time Rom. Baggers Imando with Champions FC. And Tom Robinson with another team name that I love, TNE's Tesco Bag. So congrats to all the top 10. We'll talk a little bit about next year's mini league, and we actually have a plan to get one of these FPL merch trophies as part of the partnership for next season. So that'll be one of next year's prizes. So before we kind of go into it, let's just quickly give a shout out to a few of the haulers who've been here. So first we have Ramanathan. It's like nothing's changed. It's like the whole last month just disappeared, and we're back, and the haulers are here. Squeak, squeak, Robert Ducky, good to see you, mate. Despite you stealing Rafinha in the nth hour, I will still forgive you, and I'm willing to stay friends. Andy Martin, yep, the season did start, but it was a late kickoff, as it always is with Net That Haul. So yeah, FPL Mike Halpin, nice to see you, mate. Kieran's here as well. We've got another Mariner joining us live. FPL Chips, thank you, mate. He's the one who found out about the very sneaky exclusion of you from the Content Creators League. Yeah, sneaky Dan. Devindra Raj, good to see you. See if there's anyone I've missed. Otherwise, I'll keep shouting people out as they tune in. Ballroom Jam, good to see you. Yep, we definitely been enjoying the break. Bungle as well. And gives a shout out to Gabe, who's somehow managed to connect from Brokeback Mountain. We've got one of our members, Nehal, good to see you, mate. Yep, we've lost poor Hibbo along the way. And yeah, I guess just before you start your section,
you missed my
quick shout. No, I said hi to Mike.
Did you? Oh,
yeah, you're just giving the shout out that he gave to Bungle. It's the Gooners. These are the Gooner listeners in the pod.
Sorry.
Yeah,
this little click going on. Yeah,
exactly. It's a little click. But shout out to Sean Burke as well, who signed up as a YouTube member 11 days ago. So our latest hauler, and I think this is the first episode since he became a member. So we've still got 11 members, despite a few cancellations during the off season. But we're back. There's going to be an episode every week. We're going to do the season review and lessons learned today, and a sneak peek at Chris's FDRs. Next week, we're going to look at key strategies like we did last season. So kind of looking at team values, structures, fixture swings. And then we're going to do a pod for goalkeepers and defenders. The 4th episode will be on mids. The 5th episode will be on forwards. And then the 6th and final episode of preseason will be game week 1. So lots of content planned. If anyone wants to become a YouTube member and support, you can sign up. There's some new stuff coming with the membership that you'll see before the season starts. So we're hoping to create a free Discord where the haulers can come and catch up with each other and talk all things FPL and grow the community we have beyond just the Twitter timeline. But also for the paid members, there will be some private channels, and we're looking at some stuff that might be interesting, like kind of 15-minute team reviews via the voice chat functions within Discord. So if you're a member or you're going to become a member, do drop us a message after the stream, please, and let us know if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see as part of the membership in the new season. But yeah, that's me done. Hit like, hit subscribe, smash it, as I say, or get out, and we'll let Chris get going.
Yeah, and just to let you know as well, we've omitted the fact that Gabe's going to look at all 17 teams that he can physically look at over the next 6 weeks as well with his little matchups. So obviously things will change during that time. So obviously you have to take that with a pinch of salt, Gabe, of course. But I will be
updating. I'll be updating each one as things do change. So right before the season starts, what we'll do is we'll release the packet of 17. And the reason it's 17 and not 20 is because I don't watch the championship, and I only like to talk about teams I watch. So.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Okay, right. So let's get into it. So, all right, over to me then. So, first things first, because Net That Haul really formed itself on the back of the Captaincy Metric, I wanted to touch on captaincy because it's just been so important. I amassed 782 points for captaincy, 20.6 points per game week. I think last year it was 16 points per game week. So now, obviously, more doubles, this, that, and the other. That could explain it. I was 72% successful. Even I didn't follow the metric for everything because it was over 80%. I got 27 out of 38 successful picks. And my best captain pick was Mo Salah in game week 26, 84 points. Thank you very much. My worst captaincy pick, probably, I think a few of you will probably remember this one, was Dennis in game week 23, where he got -2, rather Mane-esque, as I would say. Yes, enough said. Captain Salah 20 times, Ronaldo 4, Kane 2, Son 2, and Bruno Fernandes 2. And then I captained some others. Let's talk about these. Dennis, game week 23. Bowen, game week 21. Excellent choice. That metric pointed us that way, if I remember rightly. Mason Mount, game week 34. Oh dear, oh dear. Yotta in game week 24. Success. Lukaku, game week 7. That turned out to be a massive mistake, didn't it? Richarlison, game week 37. As much as I hate him, I got rid of my biases, Gabe. You need to remember this for next year. No Spurs biases.
You unlearned something from Lukaku.
Yes,
from Richarlison.
Wout. Well, I could swear, but I won't. Weghorst. Game week 27. Yes, okay. And then Antonio in game week 3. So out of my sort of, how can I put it, differential captains, I had 4 successes and 4 epic fails. So I think the first thing to say, guys, and we're going to touch on my golden rules for what I've, basically what we've learned, this, that, and the other. Let's look at Dennis and Weghorst, right? 2 poor teams. 2 distinctly average players with both double game weeks, and both ended in disaster. The first lesson for me is, in future, when crap teams have double game weeks, they have 2 crap games, not 1. What do you reckon, Nima?
I think I captained both of them. Yeah, no, I'm definitely guilty of double game week fever. I'm sure that lesson will still be one that haunts me next year when I still go for it. But the good news is, with less COVID cancellations, there should be less of these double game weeks. So there's less opportunity for me to follow my heart and captain these crap players from crap teams. And I think like the pinnacle of it for me was when I captained Dennis and the manager got sacked in the international break between the first and second game of the double game week. That it really just made me realize, like, what have I done? Like, what was I thinking? Like, I captained the player from a team whose manager was 1 loss away from a sacking. So there was definitely a lesson there. I think it's interesting that you captained Salah 20 times. I think when we get to mine, I probably did something similar. It was weird because I think it was 2 halves to the season. The first half, Salah being captain most of the weeks was kind of working fine. And in the second half, we all had to suddenly like unlearn what we'd learned, as Gabe said earlier, in the philosophy. And we had to suddenly learn that we had to captain someone else. Some of us captain good players from good teams in that time. Me and you captain crap players from crap teams. So yeah, I hope that we don't kind of make the same mistake again in the new season. I can't imagine what your captaincy points would have been without those kind of errors.
Well, you think about those, and then you think about Mason Mount in game week 34 when I went treble Chelsea and took Ronaldo out, who hauled.
It's painful, isn't it?
And Ronaldo would probably have been my captain that week if I hadn't gone for a double game week. I mean, I think that's a different argument. I think Mount was a decent shout. It was just one of those ones, doesn't always work. Interestingly enough, I captained forwards 11 times and midfielders 27 times. I didn't captain a single defender. And a lot of that, for the reason for captaining midfielders over defenders, is that extra point and that clean sheet point. I think it's important. It's an important consideration going forwards. So that's the captaincy. Now I want to bring another point to the table, and something which I really succeeded with, is combinations. And I've put on the screen, we've got Ben Rama and Antonio, because they got me off to a flying start. For once, I remember, Gabe, I can remember doing a bit of eye test stuff for once. I channeled my inner lens, watched West Ham against Atalanta and picked them both on the back of that and the way they were playing. And yes, they started brilliantly with 25 points between them in game week 1 and 28 points between them in game week 2. So, what a start. I couldn't ask for any more. But what I wanted to look at here is players who helped me most okay, and you look at this and you see pairs of players, you know, Son, Kulusevski, a pair, you know, Benrahma and Antonio. The double City defence, Diaz and Cancelo. As much as I was trying to take Diaz out, I managed to sit on their hands long enough for it to start working. You know, they got 12 points in game week 60, 30 points in game week 80, 12 in game week 20, 13 in 24, and 10 in 25. So you look at it like that. One of the biggest lessons I think I can take out of this is don't try and go for uber differentials. You can make just as good a differential by picking a pair of players than you can by going for something left field. Can you remember the FPL meets, Nima? Smith Rowe and Saka? Also, it was Smith Rowe and Laka, wasn't it?
Yeah, you had the Lacazette assists when he was getting those rogue assists at the start of the 2022 calendar year.
Yeah. When you all told me he was crap, and I got all those points from him. Yeah, I remember it well. I
think the key, Chris, just really quickly here, I think the key to the combinations, though, is kind of from a tactical perspective to make sure that they don't cannibalize each other in terms of their production, that
Good
when
point.
one shines, that actually makes the other one shine as well, that they have complementary roles. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that certainly happened because I also had Bruno and Greenwood, in game week 1 as well. So they also combined pretty well. So yeah, but I think, the Son and Kulusevski, for example, towards the end of the season, 46 points in game week 35, 25 points in game week 36, and 40 points in game week 38. That is season changing, really. And I think for me, I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I'm going to learn. I'm going to continue looking for this type of combination going forwards, rather than going for a uber low owned player, and say we've got Rubber Ducky here already starting to think about it, but he's had to change his mind quite quickly. Jesus and Rafinha, Odegaard.
I wonder why they weren't letting him on the Arsenal Twitter Spaces earlier when they were all crying like a colt.
Yeah, but here we go. So we've got Arsenal forward and midfielder for the first 6 game weeks. That's probably a decent shout, but I think once we get into the Europa League, then I think that becomes a problem.
Yeah, we'll look at the FDRs soon and compare how your metrics look.
There's an example of maybe what you might look at going forwards. Right, all right. So my lessons learned. All right, then. So the first thing, don't knee-jerk or try not to. Patience is often a virtue. Example, Kieran will remember, we were sat in the Alliance Arena in Munich, and Tony went off. And I held Tony up to that point. A lot of people had sold him. That's about all he did first part of the season. I eventually did sell him, but I got those points out of him. If you've made an obvious mistake, correct it quickly. Aspilicueta. That really hurt me in Chelsea, and I did not correct that. I should have corrected it. Basically, Aspilicueta wasn't playing. It was a Rudiger injury, if I remember, that had happened, and that forced a change in plan. And Aspilicueta all of a sudden went out the side for a number of weeks, and I missed a rack of clean sheets. I remember that quite well. If it's obvious, then do it. Ronaldo, game week 4. Ronaldo, game week 33. They were both obvious in my view. Find the explosive assets. Bowen, Vardy. Game week 38, Vardy was a great shout. This one's a good one. Take bite-sized chunks, not something so big you're going to choke on. So, how many guys, we talk about differentials and blue picks and this, that, and the other. How many differentials would you normally be looking to run with? 3 or 4? Or rough Just, you know what I mean by differential. It's like players who you're still quite confident you're going to get some returns from, but you're just going to nibble away at the edges rather than just going all in on, you know, being very, very gung-ho, shall we say. Is the cat here? Oh, good. The cat's turned up.
That's good news.
So what do you reckon about that? Who do you... Yeah, I'm live. That's the wife just walked in.
For anyone who didn't know, the podcast listeners especially, the cat went missing earlier this morning in the early hours, so it's good to see Oliver's back.
Little shit.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I like for game week 1, especially just looking into the new season. I think the template will be stronger than normal. But even saying that, I normally would only ever have 2 to 3 players that are like considered differential at the start of a season. I think as you go into the final kind of 3 or 4 game weeks and you're trying to catch gaps in your mini leagues, you can afford to really go for it and take a higher risk and maybe fall short if it goes wrong, but at least you know you tried, right? But at the beginning, I like to kind of, I know it's very boring and I'm sure Andy would disagree, but I like the whole stay with the pack and differentiate later mentality personally.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Gabe, here's one for you. Don't force it. Selling Ronaldo for Werner in game week 34 and that Mahrez pick in 36. They killed me. Have you got any examples of trying to force it and it going wrong?
I feel like I forced my wild card. Especially my first wild card. I don't know that there was like necessarily a need at the time. It was more of a greed, I think. And I think maybe that's the differentiator now that I think about it. When it's a greed instead of a need, then you might be forcing it.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. But I mean, again, you know, Werner really was a bit too left field, to be honest with you. It didn't work. And of course, I sold Ronaldo and he carried on hauling. So that really destroyed me.
I think in this case, Mariner, for you, I mean, you went with a bad player in Werner and a rotation risk player. So maybe it's like forcing it when the risk level is just too high and it's not worth it.
And I openly admit it, but I was at that stage trying to go for number 1. So I was, you know, it was a calculated risk and it backfired. Mahrez, on the other hand, it could have worked. In fact, you know, it nearly did.
Till he missed the penalty, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I was in a bar in Dubai and I said to my mate, I said, he's going to miss this. And he did. Oh my God. Anyway, there we go. And there's the other rule. Double trouble. Bad teams have 2 tough games, not 1. There we go.
Yeah,
so
I think you touched on that earlier, yeah.
So that's basically me. So yeah, how am I going to emulate last season? With great difficulty, I think. But I will give it a damn good go. And hopefully by using some of these lessons, and hopefully other people, if people can, you know, empathize with my journey, hopefully, you know, people can benefit from what I've said too. So that's me. Nima, it's you next. So I'll put yours on. So
yeah. Before I get into it, I'm just going to say, Robert Ducky says something that I also agree with, that 2 years ago when I had a worse season, obviously, than last season, I didn't follow this, which is a maximum of 1 player that has no Premier League experience in your squad. And I remember I just played Fantasy Bundesliga because it was the only fantasy around before Project Restart. And Kai Havertz and Werner were amazing in that game for that second half of the season. And they both signed to Chelsea. And I broke my rule and I started the season with both of them. And I'm pretty sure I then had a couple of random other differentials. And the whole thing just went pear-shaped. So I definitely will not be looking to go for anyone new to the league apart from Haaland. And I'll just put that out there because with City's fixtures, I'm not going to not have Haaland. So good luck to those drafting without him.
Who are you going to drop for him, though? Who are you going to drop for him? This is the question.
We'll get there next week in the draft.
$1 million question, because I'll tell you what, apparently, Summertime here wants me to say trouble again. So there you go, because I reckon you might be in trouble if you drop certain players for Haaland.
Yeah, I think I know which player she might mean. I think it's our very own Heung-min Son. But yeah, we'll see. So my lessons learned. I took a different approach from you, Mariner. I downloaded my data from Live FPL, and I just compared it to the season before to see what I did differently. So 2 years ago, in the 2021 season, I finished 62K, and it was my second best season. So, you know, by no means was it bad. I had a great time. But one of the main things I noticed was that I took a lot more captaincy punts that season. There was a lot of weeks where I captained different players. I think I had a total of at least, I'd say, maybe 20 different captains in 38 weeks. And that's something that's not the case this season. When we get to the next slide, I'll talk more about captaincy. And the other thing I realized is I didn't have any sub 100K game week ranks in the season where I finished 62K. And my chip usage was pretty poor. So this season, for anyone listening on podcasts, my game week ranks my points when I did my chips. So game week 19 was my first free hit. 58 points doesn't seem like much, but I looked at it, and in that game week, it was actually like a decent game week rank. 58 points was decent. It wasn't amazing. I still felt like I wasted it, but you know, it is what it is. Triple captain in game week 26, 131 points. Bench boost in game week 29, 121 points. And then my free hit 2 in game week 36, 115 points. So I think for me, like, I used the chips this season for the majority of all my big gains. And the season before the 62K season, when I finished 1,100, so just missed triple digits, I also did well with my chips. So I think for me, I've always been a chip player. I've always followed Ben Krillin. I've always tried to map when the double game weeks are. And I don't think that will change next year. And my 2 most successful years in the 10K, they have been because of like following a very clear chip strategy. So I'm definitely going to be looking at kind of when those blanks happen around the cup, semi-finals, quarterfinals, when the big doubles happen. And I'm going to try and go for the same approach. I know some people are going to bench boost in game week 1. It works for them. They don't have to carry a bench for the rest of the season or whatever. But it's just not for me. Like, I just think the value in a double game week, I don't think I would have got 121 points in game week 1 with a bench boost personally. So yeah, and also you've built more team value towards game week 29 than game week 1. So I'd rather have like 106 million pound of assets on my bench boost than 100 mil. The other thing was I did much better with captaincy. So I got 744 points, nowhere near you or some of the live viewers who told me they got over 800 captaincy points. But it was nearly 200 points more than my captaincy the year before, where I had like a different captain every week. So kind of sticking with 2 or 3 premiums and captaining them most of the season, that seems to work for me, where I try to make my gains is in those 2 or 3 differentials I mentioned. So I don't really try to, like, I didn't captain Havertz in game week 9. I don't really go against the template captain most weeks. I try to make my gains in my strange players that like no one else has that are like sub 5% EO. There was times when I could have gone on tilt. So I stagnated in rank for very long periods where I'd be like between 30K and 20K, between like 15K and 10K. And it was very close on certain occasions for me to go on tilt and like maybe do what Gabe said, which is like force a wild card or get frustrated and try to like make up ground. But I just kept telling myself like, it's fine, you know, like I wasn't, you know, if I look at it properly, like my captaining the template captain, if those 2 or 3 differentials don't get points, I am probably going to stagnate because they're my only route to gaining rank. So I was just like, okay, like they didn't hit this time. I'll just keep trusting that I made the decision to buy them for a good reason. Whatever the outcome was, I'm not going to try and force it. So I stayed safe with my style. I didn't go on tilt. And I think that was quite helpful for me. Whereas the season before when I finished 62K, I got very frustrated because I spent 17 weeks between, I think, something like 100 and 200K. And I ended up like taking unnecessary risks, wasting chips to try and make up rank before I was ready. Stubbornness, I think this relates to your point, Gabe. I was set on using my wildcard in like game week 31 or 34 for a bench boost in 35. And when the information came out that there was going to be that double game week for Chelsea in 28, I skipped the game week 26 wildcard. Loads of people did it, had great success. I triple captain Salah that week. And we then had the week with Weghorst in 27. And I think I made this decision where I was hoping that Southampton would play Burnley in game week 30. But because of what happened in the Cup, they didn't. And I'd taken a hit to bring in Weghorst in 27. I'd captained him. I had Briohe in my team. So suddenly I had 2 players that I'd bought planning for this game week 30 blank to not use a chip. And then they weren't going to play anymore. And I'd fallen behind to the game week 26 wildcarders. And I just had to be willing to change with this new information. I had no Chelsea players. Arsenal, Spurs, and Liverpool all had a game week in 29. And I thought I could wildcard in 28, get my 3 Chelsea players. So I bought in Reece James, who I didn't have at the time. I really went for it. And I then kind of obviously saw James got injured, sold him for Robertson in 29, activated my bench boost with triple Spurs, triple Arsenal, triple Liverpool. And that saved my season. So when you look at like my best game week ranks, my best game week rank was 5.8K. It was game week 29, my bench boost. So, if I'd waited to wildcard in game week 34, I wouldn't have had the team that then was my second best game week rank, game week 33, 6K. So it's like, I had to be willing to put aside the plan I had and just adapt with new information and use my chips different to what I expected. The other thing that's really interesting, just to say final point, is my worst rank in the season was game week 1. It's also my 3rd best game week rank at 42K. And then game week 2 was my 5th best game week rank, 76K. So like Chris, I was quite fortunate. I think the combinations work really well. Where there are situations where, like, say, 99% of people own Cancelo, you're not going to gain anything unless you do have the second City defender. When Antonio was a popular captain and he was hauling for fun for the first 5 weeks, if you didn't have Benrahma, again, it wasn't much gain. Bruno had his hat-trick. If you had Greenwood, it was, at the time, obviously a huge gain. So I like the double-ups. I like picking 2 players from one team, attacking players especially, more so than defenders. I always play back 3, even in the season that was big at the back. But yeah, I just think that for me, the big thing was just, I'd say if I had to wrap it up, it would be like kind of chip strategy, not having too many different captains, only really changing my captain from premiums on the very rare occasion for good reason, and being willing to change my plan even the night before, despite weeks of planning, because if new information comes to light, you just have to be willing to adapt. So, I mean, that was my big thing. And obviously I had 5 like game weeks where I was sub 100K compared to 0 sub 100K game week ranks the year before. So I think that massively helps. Just on the next slide, there's a few other bits which I'll rattle through because they're not that interesting, but it was just, obviously we talked about the doubles. For my captains, there was only 3 times in 38 weeks where any players were captain more than once. So I captained Salah 20 times, Ronaldo 7 times, and Kane twice. And I had 9 other captains as a total of 1 time each. So this was very different to my season before. And I remember in the preseason last year, we brought on Tom Stevenson, who was like Hall of Fame, like #1 in the world at FPL. And we looked at his season 2021, and he had like 8 different captains. And it was something like 25 times was 1 premium, 10 times the other premium, twice Gundogan, and then like a couple of other double game weekers. And that was when it first clicked to me that, wait a second, he had this incredible year for the 3rd year in a row. He had like an average 1.7K OR across 3 seasons. And these are the 3 seasons with the most managers. And I thought, this guy like doesn't really feel the need to change captain that often. He just has 2 premiums in his team. He picks one of them to captain. And it's very rare he goes outside that. And that was the big lesson I took from last season that I'm hoping to continue into next season is, like, I saw people talking about 1 premium teams. It's not for me. Even if you think you're going to captain Salah 20 times, I still want the other premium to have the option just in case. I took a lot more hits than ever before. I took -60, which is 15 hits, compared to just -32, which was 8 hits the season before. So I think that was obviously because of the COVID season. And that's what I mean by, I had to learn to be more aggressive. I'm a very passive player. As I say, I'm very template. But when the opportunities arose, I had to make big moves when I felt that it was time. And a lot of the time, because I was having a very strange chip strategy, not many people game week kind of 28 wildcarded into bench boost 29 with free hit 35. So free hit 36 because everyone else was free hitting 37, for instance. I had this weird team where the players people were trying to get on, say, their free hit, I had in my team. So then I had to like get other players that I knew they'd also get on their free hit that I didn't already have, but then they would stay in my team. So I had to like be very careful with my hits and make sure they were planned. So when I went into game week 29, as well as do James to Robertson, I actually took a -8 straight after a wild card to activate that bench boost. And I brought in Richarlison and Gordon, who both blanked. But come game week 31, they both had a double. And I could think of the next asset while everyone was trying to get like an Everton player for that double. When it came to 37 and people were looking to free hit, I already had Richarlison and Gordon. So I was kind of like, well, City's double game weeks in 36. I have no City players. I wildcarded them all out after game week 27. The only week I had Man City players after game week 27 was in my game week 36 free hit. That was the only week. I had no Cancelo, no one else. So how I finished top 1K, I don't know. But again, I think I just want to show that you can have a different chip strategy, but you've got to be really clear where the weaknesses in your squad are. And you need to plug those holes against in the weeks where you know everyone else is using chips. Because as we saw, my chips were some of my best game week ranks. You've got to assume the people using their chips are going to have their best game week ranks. So if you don't want to fall behind and you're not using a chip because you went down a different strategy, you need to be prepared to take hits to make up for that. And that's why I was more aggressive. And then the final point is just my net gains and net losses. I thought this was interesting, like the top 10 players that actually got me points and the ones that lost me points. So Ronaldo got me 82 points, Saka 69 points, Richarlison 52, Kane 45, Rudiger 43, Tony 42, Salah 39. So still gained something from him, despite everyone apparently having him and captaining him. Turns out they didn't. Coutinho 37 points, Robertson 35, and White 35, which I'll take that net gain for, basically 4.5 mil compared to Salah's 39-point net gain for 13.5 mil. But that's a joke for a different day. My total losses. So even though I had Son and captained him for some of his hauls, I also mainly had Kane all the time Son was hauling. So Son actually cost me 67 points. Ramsdale, I had him for many weeks, but again, he actually cost me 40 points. Fernandes cost me 37 points despite having his hat-trick in game week 1, because I didn't have him for his huge haul in the first double game week where I had Ronaldo and he blanked and Bruno hauled. Rafinha, 24 points. Maddison, 24 points. James, again, I had him for tons of the season. Alonso, I had for tons of the season. They both cost me 23, 21 points. I remember I had James, as I said, on the wild card. Alonso did better than him. There was talk of, before the FA Cup final, Alonso is more likely to play both. So I was like, okay, on my free hit in game week 36, I'll go for Alonso over James and I'll get James back in 37. What happens? Alonso gets 19 points in 36. James gets 2. James comes back into my team in 37. Alonso scores in 37. James gets an assist. So it's like there was many times where it just felt like no matter what I bloody did, I was always on the wrong side of the coin flip. But again, I didn't let that stagnation get to me was the other thing I was saying, Gabe. Like I tried to just trust my process and stay on my path and not worry too much. Mount 21, Cancelo 18, and Dennis, that bastard, 16. But yeah, I think all in all, like there's a lot of people here who are wankers. The season before, I think it was the likes of Lingard were in there. Emi Martinez was in there. There's always some people that like they're hauling every week and I just never buy them because I'm always looking to get the next asset instead and hope that because I feel like if I buy them, it's too late. And that's why with James and Ramsdale, I bought them and it was too late. I bought them from fear. I bought them just to protect EO against me. And with hindsight, it's easy to say, but maybe I should have chased the next kind of, rocket ship, not
you can't
just gone and bought them.
You can't have them all, though, can you? I mean, there's some amazing similarities between mine and your season. The -8 hits straight after a wild card, 60 in hits as well. And in fact, 9 of my hits were in the last 8 weeks. Because I was doing exactly because I spunked all my chips between 26 and 29 and then basically had to hang on for grim death trying to pull rabbits out the hat all the way through till the end of the season. But yeah, great, Nima. Honestly, you had a marvellous season, really.
It was my best season in 9 years. Yeah, brilliant. So I couldn't believe it. So you know what? I think that haulers will love this human side of the story. So I was at the FPL meets for game week 38, biggest one. Yeah, it was like 70 people. And I was there nervously refreshing my phone in the injury time. And I remember seeing my rank was something like 1,112. And I was like, shit, I'm 8 ranks behind my rank 2 years ago. Like, I'm never going to get this top 1K. And then suddenly I see like a Liverpool goal and I'm like, who scored? And they're all telling me it's Robertson. I'm like, no, you're just making it up. I was like, there's no fucking way. I don't want to get my hopes up. Maybe there's VAR. Then I heard like James got an assist on the other side. And I was like, oh my God. I was like refreshing the sites. They were all crashing. My phone was on 1% battery. One game left with minutes to go. And I looked at it and it was like 8, 9, 5, OR. And then my phone just died. And then I was like, fuck, like what happened? What happened with bonus points? I was like, oh my God, that could be like 1 or 2 points that are being kicked straight back out the top 1K. And eventually someone else got their phone out and like they found my rank in the mini league and were like, no, you're good, mate. And yeah, that was wild, to be honest with you. But
Brilliant.
I think the one last takeaway before we go on is you can see that my net gains from the top 10 is significantly more than my net losses. So really, I'd say Son, Ramsdale, and Fernandez hurt me. But the rest of them, like, it felt like Rafinha, Maddison, James, Alonso, Cancelo, all these players, even Dennis for a while, felt like they were slaughtering my season. But in the end, it was very little net gain loss because in the times when I didn't have these players, say Cancelo 18 points, he lost me. Well, White got me 35 points for 2 million less. I had White, and people laughed at me saying, how can you not have big at the back? Yeah, like, I had my free premiums. I had Robertson, Trent, and I think Rudiger, which I then changed to James on Wildcard. I had those three. And I had White and Davies. I couldn't afford Doherty on my Game Week 28 wildcard, so I was stuck with Davies. I had Davies from that wildcard to the end of the season. There was many opportunities for me to think, oh, I should just take a -4 and upgrade one of White or Davies to Cancelo. And I was like, I got to trust my intuition here. Like, there's a reason I went for these players. I squeezed out an extra attacker. Everyone thinks the attackers are shit. Everyone's laughing at me. 1 week I started Richarlison. I don't ask for advice on the timeline. I put my team to stay locked, and one guy was like, Davies over Richarlison, in my opinion. And I was like, mate, I'm not fucking asking. He's on penalties. and guess what? Like, Richarlison hauled fucking City.
Well, you're brave, because I through gritted teeth brought Richarlison in game week 37. Gabe knows how much I hate Richarlison. I just wanted to Gabe, I want to bring you in. You've been sat there nice and
I think it's your time.
Your team. But I want to just bring a couple of points in. We've obviously got some great managers who come into Net That Haul. One of which is Andy Martin. And he's a couple of points here. And Gabe, I come to you on this. When I went for differential captains, I still owned the template captain, which did well for me. Son in game week 3, Cancelo game week 18, and KDB game week 36. Is that something you do you agree with that type of scenario? So in a sense, you're hedging your bets a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a good way to cushion the blow if things do go south, right? That you still get, at least half the points from if we're talking about a differential captain versus the EO, but even so, just failing on a captaincy is such a brutal experience. I think back to the people that captained Havertz, right? And most of them probably still, they had Salah, they had Salah, but that didn't hurt how badly it felt in the moment. And I think that's one theme that I'm seeing come up here is how badly one game week can feel. And Nima, you were talking about this, like, try to maintain a level head about it and stay true. Like, you had a plan for a reason. You thought about this plan for a long time, and not to course correct too quickly was one of your lessons as well, Mariner. So don't get stuck in the emotion of the one game week. Accept the reds. You're gonna get some red arrows, right?
And this brings me on to my next point, and this is something that I will learn from Andy. My biggest takeaway from last season is you cannot get a green arrow every week. Take the red arrows on the chin for greater rank gain in your optimal weeks and identify those. Amen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
And I think
write a book. Because I tell you what, that's right out of Ross's Ross Raptors angle there, for as far as I'm concerned. That is complete psychology. You've got to. Sometimes I was frightened to take a red arrow, so I just took hits. Now it paid off in most cases for me, but I did go. That Chelsea one was an absolute disaster for me in game week 34, and that was an example of having to chase something.
But you were trying to win the game, right? So it's what I was saying. Like, you want to take those punts at the end, and if you fall short, at least you tried. You don't live with the regret.
But I still felt that it was one step too far, and it was silly. I should have just took it on the chin to a certain extent and built for the following week, and then assaulted another week. Really, maybe not.
Yeah, because you already got the gain from Ronaldo, and then you had the game week 33 gain. You knew he was going to then blank and only have 2 games in 3 game weeks. it was like you could have maybe held on to him because you knew Werner would then be a fire, right? Like
Yeah,
I almost bought
exactly.
Werner. I was gonna do Ronaldo to Werner as well, and
Exactly that.
in the end I
Exactly.
didn't. Yeah, so I was very lucky. I kind of held on to Ronaldo. I spoke to Harry FPL Tips at Fest, and I told him, "What do you think I'm gonna buy Werner?" And he's a Chelsea fan, and he was just like, "Mate, like, please, just please don't do it. Like, what are you thinking about?" And the reason I wanted to do it was because it would allow me to fund, like, I think it was James instead of Alonso or something along those lines. So in the end, I just decided I just got to accept my fate. You know, Ronaldo served me well. As you saw, he's my biggest net gains for the whole season. My second most popular captain after Salah. But yeah, I think you got to just sometimes accept it and not chase because you'd made your gains is what I'm getting at. You didn't need to be greedy and then try to make the gains of the people who were going to wildcard in 34 or free hit in 34. Like, you can accept that loss and then make your points up the next week when they're all dealing with the mess of Werner and their team.
Yeah. Anyway, lessons learned, eh? It's always good to learn some lessons. Gabe, what lessons have you learned this season? So, you're a personal best, 2,519 points by around 150 points. So, it's not all bad.
No, it's not. It's not all bad, and I'm going to go through my lessons a little bit differently because I think for me, what I think I'll start with my first lesson learned is, we were just talking about this. My experience of the game and the results of the game itself sometimes cloud my judgment. So rather than and I know if I get very analytical and do it kind of step by step the way you guys did it, that I'm gonna forget a lot of these lessons, but I'll remember like the feeling of the lesson. So I'm gonna go a little bit based on feeling here. So I ended with I'll start with captaincy. Ended with 682 captaincy points, which again that's over 100 points better than I did the season prior, and mostly following the metric. It was a success rate of 64%, so I didn't totally follow the metric, and when I didn't, I paid for it severely. So I mean, one of the first fails there, I think, for me, and this is this leads to the biggest lesson for me of last season is sometimes I get enamored with players or I get enamored with situations and then the actual like football side of it, and I lose grasp of the FPL side of it. So a lot of the times the best captaincy pick, like Mariner, you said, the obvious pick, right? So we're looking at Ronaldo in game week 4. I didn't have an easy way to get to Ronaldo, and I wasn't ready to, that wasn't what I had planned for my hits early on in the season. So I wanted to wait and see. I didn't know how he'd integrate. So I created all of this narrative. And I went actually there in game week 4 where I got a -2 from Antonio, who had double-digit hauls in each of the first 3 game weeks. I went with the metric, said Antonio, and I got burned, and that was a severe swing. I think Ronaldo got 12 points, so captains got 24 points out of them or something like that. And I ended up with a -2, and that's where I began to fall behind. But I think that experience, I had a plan to follow the metric, and that experience kind of led to some distrust in my initial plan, and then I went away from it. And when I would try like some other captaincies, it didn't work out. And then some of those other ones, Lukaku in game week 7, for example, these are just like bad decisions. So it's like my state of mind because of a certain game week or because of a missed opportunity had a ripple effect, and it created bad decisions. So that's like bad luck initially, maybe, but I could have tempered that bad luck with a proper structure, like team structure. And that's my biggest lesson. I need to focus more on team structure and being more flexible from a price point of view in this upcoming season. I think that'll be the biggest change in my game. Like most people, I captain Salah more than anybody, 20 times, and then Bruno, Ronaldo, De Bruyne, and Kane a couple times each. Let's see, I picked, so these images here, I went with the graphics on the Playmaker app. They're at Playmaker on Twitter, and I just really like their season review. It takes me back, and I can through the narrative of the season, so that's why I like it. And my best captain returns, Salah, obviously, for his 84 points. with the triple captaincy. De Bruyne with his 60 points with his captaincy. I know Andy Martin's in the chat, and he went triple captain on De Bruyne that week. That's being patient, right? That's an example of patience and trusting your process, and know that this is what you're targeting, and not get discouraged by maybe what seemed like a missed opportunity when you didn't use a triple captain on Salah. And well, obviously my best captain was Salah, and the worst was Antonio for the -2. Luckily, I escaped both the Dennis trap and the Weghorst trap. So,
Oh, no,
I didn't fall
you
into
had
that.
Dennis. You had Dennis, don't?
Oh no, but
cheat.
I didn't. I mean, in terms of captaincy.
He's there, 23, game week 23. You did.
Oh, I did. Oh, I don't remember that one. What are you gonna do?
He blocked it from his memory.
So I blocked
but he
it
doesn't
from
have
my memory,
Weghorst there.
The
But
Mariner.
I don't have Weghorst, but the Antonio one, that one stands out a lot more than the Dennis one for me.
Yeah.
Precisely because of that missed opportunity of Ronaldo, where I should have
Yeah.
taken a hit for Ronaldo in that game week.
I think
did
team
have a
structure
couple of-
is interesting, by the way. Just what Gabe says about the team structure, I think that is really interesting, because obviously when Ronaldo arrived in game week 4, I am assuming your game week 1 team wasn't set up in a way that you could get to him easily, as you say, and you didn't want to rip up your team or do an early wildcard, right?
Gabe? This froze. Are you there, Gabe? I think. Can you hear us?
Am I back?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
So you didn't
sorry,
want to. Nima was saying you didn't want to rip your team up for an early wild card. Did you not have the structure to get to Ronaldo in game week 4? Was that the reason?
I didn't have the structure, and from what I remember, I think I only had one free transfer, and it's a player coming. There was risk. I thought there was risk to try and rip up all of my plans, rip up my structure, rip up everything for one player with a hit. I thought it was too much risk. Maybe it wasn't too much risk. Maybe this is what you're saying. Like maybe I missed something and I didn't see the obvious.
Yeah, I think the thing is if you're going for, I think it was one of those seasons where you had to be quite aggressive. You had to go hard at a particular player, and you had to commit. And I think, I made a lot of those calls the right way last season. Now, not to say it's not going to be different next season, but some of these calls, are pretty, pretty finely balanced. But that said, I thought Ronaldo again in those 2 weeks when he hauled were fairly logical.
Mm-hmm.
Equally going for Weghorst and Dennis were not logical as you actually look back on it in hindsight. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And this is where we come on to the next thing for your chips, Gabe. So, so there we go. Chips you played this season. Back to you.
Yeah, the hits and chips here. It looks decent when you look at the raw numbers like this. Free hit, it gave me 81 points. But when I look at that free hit and the other decisions I was considering, the only thing that made that the free hit, or maybe it was the second free hit, was a Bruno captaincy. I had no way to Bruno. I think that was on the second free hit. I had no way to Bruno, so I free hit in that game week. I captained Bruno, and it worked out. And I think from what I remember, if I remember correctly, I kind of like it helped, but just a little bit, because all of my other picks were trash.
I remember that week. You had a good captaincy, but nothing else did anything.
Nothing else. And so these are like, when looking at the raw numbers for me, it doesn't really tell me much. I want to go back and I think what decisions did I forego? What didn't I do because I made this decision? And I think that there was another, that I could have held the free hit. I think at game week 30 or 31 or something like that, and it probably would have worked out better on that front.
You've had similar before, right? You had similar before. I remember the season before, you had Gundogan 57 points. The next week, you didn't score. Gundogan scored more than your entire team.
I guess I'm not learning that lesson yet. I'm doomed to repeat that one.
Oh, never mind. I mean, look, you're still smiling, mate. That's the main
oh,
thing.
Yeah, no,
and it's not and your finish is not shabby at all either. I know you you're getting quite downcast at one stage. But
top 1%, yeah.
Top 1%.
I think like if it was any other walk of life, and there was 9 million people put in a room, and you were told you'd made it into the top 1% against 9 million people, we'd all be so happy. So I think we need to reset our expectations. Like, I'm still aiming for top 100K next season. That's my annual goal. It'll be the 7th year in a row that is my target in the start of the season. Like, we might reassess depending on how you start, right? But I still don't believe this idea that it's top 10K or bust, because I know the top 10K today is what it was before, and that's maybe a topic for another day. But
it's going to be tough to get top 10K. There's just so many, and the thing is, there's so many fantastic content creators out there. There's so much information out there now. It just makes it even more difficult to find that angle. And this is where, where we at Net That Haul are trying to do things a little bit different, isn't it? With respect to Gabe with his NetxG, which has come on leaps and bounds through the summer. We've just got to figure out how to. We've just got to figure all the maths out, which we will do, Gabe, at some stage. I promise you.
Will.
Captaincy Metric's been revamped as well. We'll release that in a couple of weeks, but that's been turned into a more overall metric. So I'll be interested to share that with you in the coming weeks as well. And of course, we've got our own fixture difficulty. We'll come on to that in a minute. But I think that's the challenge, right? The challenge is, how do you get away from the masses? I think it's, you make a wrong decision and by hell does it hurt. It certainly did in the top. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it was brutal. The last 7 or 8 weeks, it was just utterly brutal. The swings, 400% rank swings. Whack.
And that's where I think it's useful to see things in blocks, right? And maybe like fixture swing blocks or just blocks to help get rid of those like immediate emotions. Just to finish up really quickly here on hits, I think I took fewer hits than I normally take. 14 hits for 56 points, just below the top 10K average, and I think the top 10K average is probably higher than normal as well, obviously. But one thing that I thought was ironic is that my best transfers of the season came the first time I took a -12. I've never taken a -12 before, and it netted me the 35 points there, as you can see on the screen on the right-hand side. So I think there's a lesson there for me where I think I wanted to limit my hits, but it was in the hits where I saw some good benefits. So I think that's a lesson in the strategy of hits. And I think the strategy of hits is tied with seeing things in a block like we just mentioned.
I think it's the seasons change, right? So like it's what you were saying, like whatever we learned this season, we have to adapt within the first 5 to 10 weeks of next season. The rules will be different, and whoever identifies where the value is next season first, they're going to be ahead of the pack. So
correct.
This season, the people who realize the money wasn't in forwards, it needs to be in the back line. The ones who realize I should be aggressive and take hits for all these doubles we don't normally have. Next season, if all the defenders are really expensive and you can't afford a big at the back, who's going to find where's the next value asset? What's the next value position? Maybe next season hits aren't the way again. So I think these things come in ebbs and flows, and we need to be willing to just throw out everything we think is a rule and adapt to the new rule of the season and try to identify the new pattern quickly before the masses. That's how you beat the masses. You want to get there before they do, basically, and let them spend a few weeks waiting, and like you waited for Ronaldo, you wanted to see him settle. By the time you do, you're then bringing him in anyway on a hit, let's say, but by then that person already has him and they can make a luxury move that you can't make that week. So they keep always feeling out of reach because you've taken too long to find the lesson of the new season. And that's what I want to get better at, because like I didn't move to big at the back at all. I was quite fortunate. I did well anyway, but other seasons I've not followed the rule of the season and it's really stung me.
It's very interesting. There's so many things you can look back on and say, oh, I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. I just think it's over. It's done. I think it was a great section, guys. I think it's always lovely to look back, but now we've got to look forward, haven't we? And the first thing I'm going to say is one thing, Nima, you actually forgot to mention your section of the shows for the next few weeks, and that is what's new. And what we're going to do is every week as well, guys, we're going to do a what's new section. Where I think Gabe and I, we had a little chit chat last week, and Gabe could tell you a funny story about that one. But there we go. Gabe and I agreed that Nima was the best FPL brain between us to be able to assess to be able to assess the new strategies, which we are going to undoubtedly get when the game launches. So, you know, what we're going to do with that bench, you know, how are we going to play it with the 5 sub scenario for things like that. So we're going to do all that. So basically it's going to be a what's new section is going to come in every show. We're going to do a little bit every week. So we're not going to overload you in all in one, because it's going to take us time to work it all out as well. But hopefully we can help you.
I'm going to do some research. I'm going for the
that's
first
right.
time in like a year. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to look into the 5 subs across the continent and the impact it's had on like wing backs, centre backs, wingers. I think you know, as it becomes the new norm, we're going to start to see football is going to be viewed from a different lens, Gabriel. I think we're going to look at football players as starters and finishers, and the contracts of the future won't be about starts. It will be about minutes, because that's going to be the currency of the new footballing world. If you can make 5 subs and you've got lots of competitions for the big teams, you'd rather be getting guaranteed but getting hooked early every game. So I think things are going to change very quickly, and with that, maybe FPL will also change rules about the game. So I'll be waiting for the site to launch, holding my breath that they might change something apart from the deadline in 10 years. Fingers crossed they actually bother, considering there's also the World Cup. So I'll review what I think the impact of the World Cup will be. There's just, you know, new signings as well. There's lots of exciting stuff in the what's new section. So as we go into all the stuff over the next 5 episodes, I'll be very sure to give you guys lots of little golden nuggets of information to prepare you for how you might want to adapt this year.
I mean, hell, I might even own Connor Cody.
Don't let please don't let Pavilion hear that. On that note, before we go on, so Jared very kindly, his co-host was in London, and I've got myself a little Fantasy Pavilion hat now. So shout out to the Fantasy Pavilion guys on YouTube. Thank you, Jared, for the sweets from Trinidad.
Good old Jared. Good old Jared. Right then. Should we have a look at some fixture difficulties? It's about time, I think, we had a bit of a look at that, isn't it? And see what we have come up with. Now, our members have seen this for a couple of weeks, although I set it up wrong, so they had to all email me to get access. But anyway, they got it in the end. It's sort of like the challenges of setting things up when you sat in the back of a taxi on the M25 after travelling for 13 hours is when I did the fixture difficulty. But there we go. That sums my last couple of weeks up. So, right. What we're going to do is we're going to look at our fixture difficulty. Last year, we compared a load of them, but the game hasn't launched, so I haven't got them all. So the one that I have got is the Hub's one, is Fantasy Football Hub. So we're going to compare our fixture difficulty against Hub and see how we compare. The first thing I'm going to say, guys, and I'm going to go through, obviously you can see all the individual matchups there for the first 5 weeks, so you can come back to them. Anyone who's listening to the pod, do come along and have a look at this, pause it, and then have a look at it. If you want to become a member, of course, you'll get all this earlier as the season starts, and it's already there now as well if you need it. But anyway, let's look at the first 5 weeks as a block. And for attack, the top 5 matchups, the teams with the best matchups are Liverpool, surprise, surprise, City, Spurs, Chelsea, and, oddly enough, Brentford. But there's a big gap between the first 4 and Brentford. And then there's, Brighton not too far behind, Leicester not too far behind that as well. The first thing I'm going to say here, guys, this looks as polarized a start of the season as I've seen. I think we sort of like threw it out very early on. There looks to be quite a strong template could actually form. What's your view, Gabe, initially?
Yeah, I mean, when you have the top two teams in the league with such a disparity in the fixture difficulty, they're at 14.9, 13.3 compared to the next step down is Spurs at 8.1. It's such a big jump that the way to differentiate is maybe which players you're trying to fit in there and how does that lend to big at the back because you want more of those players, or do you invest that money more in attacking players because maybe you see some upside there, players like Holland, which we mentioned as well. But it just certainly cements a template within those teams, right? And then, to have Chelsea and Spurs as the other two. I think then the differentiation is going to lie in, how many people go with Son, and then how does Son perform compared to some of the other more template assets from Liverpool and Manchester City.
Yep.
You might see me go all out, Gabe. I think I'm probably gonna next week make a draft with Salah, Haaland, and Son, and like 3-4 million defenders.
Damari Gray.
And a 4.5 million.
That's what I've tasked you to do, right? I've said to you, come on then, Nima, get on the drafts. You're going to have to do all the drafts.
Team. That is my dream team. Now, that is my dream team. Free premium.
Yeah. Interesting enough.
I don't think we'll see Son at 10 mil ever again. That's definitely not going to happen.
Interesting enough, guys. Arsenal. I'm going to leave my evil laugh out of it because actually I got quite a lot of points out of Arsenal towards the back end of last season. But they've been pulled down by that first matchup away at Palace. That is not an easy game. So, by the looks of things.
No, I don't think it is. No, Friday floodlights, Selhurst Park against Vieira. I think the attraction in Arsenal is perhaps not in the first 5 weeks, but a longer spell. I think over the first 8, they play all the promoted teams. In the first 5, they played Bournemouth and Fulham. I think there is an argument to be made. A lot of people talk about doubling up on Arsenal attackers to start the season with. I could understand going with one. Looking at this FDR, I think it's very different to what the official site will be. On the official site, I'm sure it will all be green. But Leicester at home is not ideal, I don't think. Villa is strengthening again, but at least it's at home. There could be an argument made for me to wait till game week 3 before they face the 2 promoted teams to go heavy on them and use those first few weeks to, bring in your free premiums from City, Spurs, and Liverpool, and maybe get a glue pick like a Tony if he's cheap enough again from Brentford. I think there's a few other teams here that they have decent FDRs, but it's just kind of like who you going to go for. Like Wolves is only 0.4 on yours, but someone like if he's priced well, he could be another great glue pick. I think there's some good options to be found, but we're going to have to find 2-3 really cheap players like sub 5.5 million from the bottom half teams that will allow us to have the assets from these big teams, because the top 4 teams here, they all have great attacking FDRs. How are you going to get a Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool, and City attacker? You're probably not. So then you want a fullback, but then the fullbacks with 5 subs, what's going to happen to them? So it's going to be quite tough. So I don't see myself having more than 2 players from any of these teams. Historically, my rule was to avoid 3 players from one team anyway, unless it was like Liverpool. With City, there's too much rotation for me for that anyway. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but I'll probably be personally just having an initial scan of this. I'll be looking at there'll be debates made of is a Diaz or Jota or both worth the money saved on a Salah, because then you can really go to town elsewhere. So I think there's going to be some really big questions to ask ourselves as the game launches and we see who gets minutes in pre-season. We can see stuff like, will Chelsea change from a back 5 to a back 4? Is Rafinha really going to play as a wing back, or is Ziyech going to be sold despite moving to a back 4, which he's good in? So it's there's so much yet to see, and there's a lot of rotation coming. And obviously the group stages of Europe, I think all of them are happening before the World Cup in November. So nearly every midweek is going to be full for all of these teams that we say have good FDRs. So that does make someone like a Brentford or a Wolves or any of these teams appealing to me, because Leicester's not going to have any European fixtures, and they got a free here for the attacking FDR. There could be some really good fixtures there.
I agree.
You could probably start with them and sell them when they face Chelsea and United in 4 and 5. So I think there's a lot of jumping to do. Like maybe I start with a Leicester attacker, move them to the Arsenal attacker in Gameweek 3 or something like that. But there's a lot of thinking to do. I think it's too early to deep dive every single team, but we're going to have to find value somewhere. We're going to have to find value
Absolutely.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is really just a very, very quick look at it, and we can just keep coming back to this as we go forward, can't we? The bottom end, let's quickly look at these. Bournemouth, flat bottom. Forest, second bottom. Newcastle, third bottom. Everton, then Southampton. I mean, the two, Bournemouth and Forest, and how delighted that Forest went up as I told you all last season. I was a bit of a closet Forest fan. Their start is as tough as it gets, and so is Bournemouth's. So let's see how it goes. Gabe, I'm going to flick past this and bring you in on the Hub one if that's okay.
Sure.
Because this is the Hub one for attack, and their top 5. City, Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea, and Arsenal. So they've got Arsenal up there. They've then got Brighton, interestingly enough. There's another team who are flying under the radar a little bit, I think.
Welbeck could be interesting, right?
Yeah. Brighton, Manchester United, then Aston Villa, and then Brentford. So Brentford a bit lower. Gabe, your perspective, have you got anything you want to add on the overall? Then we'll put the comparison up. Or in fact, I can put the comparison up right now, I think. Let's put the comparison up there. So that's the comparison between the two. So we've got City and Liverpool equal first, then Spurs, then Chelsea, then Arsenal, Brighton, Brentford, Man U, Leicester. That's the gang. So what's your take on this? I mean, we obviously got the big boys. We know roughly how we're going to play that. But what we're going to do with the likes of Brighton, Brentford, United, Leicester, Villa, perhaps. What are you going to look at with them?
I mean, I would just at this early stage, I would look at kind of what's going into these, like what are the two FDRs saying, right? So it looks like the Hub FDR, it rates Man United, significantly higher than the Net That Haul one. Do they have more historical data in there, for example, perhaps? I'm looking at Leicester, and Leicester's rated so highly in the Net That Haul FDR, and that's quite a disparity with the Hub FDR. So I would just wonder, like, what are the differences? And then just to start, because right now, we're really just starting to think about the concepts. Like, I'm not really thinking about anything specific just yet, right? So I want to know, well, why does Hub see it differently than Net That Haul, and how would I see it? What would be my perspective given these two perspectives, right? And I look at teams like Aston Villa. The Hub rates at 8, Net That Haul a little bit lower, but there could be some good enablers in Aston Villa, right? They have a new signing. They signed Kamara, who's just a fantastic central midfielder. Will that release Ramsey to get a little bit further forward? Will he have more opportunities? And Ramsey could be a nice enabler, while other people might go for the more expensive Coutinho, surely. So those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at. And then I like to look just at the top. And I know this is splitting hairs, but City and Liverpool, 2-1, 1-2. I'm probably gonna go. Is there gonna be like a double up in defense for one of those? Maybe City's always the one that we want to double up in defense. Do we go for the two center backs there? And then does that mean if we double up in the City defense, do we double up on the Liverpool attack? Like, what kind of balance are we going to strike between those two teams? These are the things that I'm looking at initially.
Yeah, it's an interesting
We're
concept.
going to spend 50% of our budget on Liverpool and City, and then maybe one Spurs. So for the remaining kind of like 10 players we need to fill with only 50% of the budget, we are definitely going to have to look to the likes of those teams you mentioned further down. And Andy Martin says that he agrees with Net That Haul, who put Wolves at 9th, compared to 17th for Hub for attack. So I think that's probably the starkest contrast we see here in the teams.
Yeah, and of course we know how our fixture difficulty works. We don't know how other people's works. That's the thing, isn't it? So all we can ever do is comment on our own. But it's an interesting thing, and I think it's quite clearly we're going to have to skirt our way around the edges, as we've said. if we want these premiums, then we're going to have to skirt our way around the edges. So it's going to be finding the value in Brighton. Trossard. He's amazing form at the end of last season, wasn't he? Brentford, Visser, a player like him. Depends what happens with Ericsson. Whether I don't know if I'm not sure whether he's going to go back to Brentford. That will impact them for sure. If he doesn't, then you've got my old mate Maddison at Leicester, who actually cost me a ton of points. I didn't have a chance to bring that up. So yeah, that's where we are attack-wise. Manchester United 8th. Not too hot on them, if I'm brutally honest with you.
The one thing I'll say on a quick comment on Wolves is we forget because of the season they had last season, where we think that they were quite a defensive team, but Bruno Lage is a very much an attack-minded coach. He wants to get that team pushing forward, and they're actually I expect their defense might suffer a little bit. I think a player like Johnny, like one of those enabling kind of attacking defenders at 4 or 5 could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think the issue is minutes, isn't it? Again, when with all the potential rotation, that's what worries me a little bit with the wing backs. I mean, look, Wolves had a pretty tough season last year, but I think I'm going to keep an eye on them. I think I'm not sure I'll start with them, but I'll certainly be keeping an eye on them quite closely, looking at that fixture difficulty. Right, let's have a look at defence quickly, and then we'll do your your quick whiz through your matchups, Gabe, and then questions and get out of here. So defensive fixture difficulty on Net That Haul, and our fixture difficulty again, you see it exactly the same format, just come across and have a look, but this time it's purely defence. City top, Liverpool second, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, and then Brighton. So there we go, Brighton mentioned again. And again, if we look at this, we've got City, and Liverpool clear again, and then we've got Spurs and Chelsea pretty much alongside each other, and then just slightly behind, well, quite a long way behind that, we've got Brighton. I think actually there's Arsenal up there. 4.9, then Brighton 3.1. So again, I think the issue is minutes. I think Nima, I think you're right onto it. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said earlier on. I think this comes down to minutes. Clearly, they're going to keep clean sheets, these teams, but are we going to have players who are on the pitch for 60 minutes? I think that's going to be key here. It makes us, I think it could have a serious impact on our strategies going forward. I wouldn't be at all surprised if I don't start with a City centre-back. So
you're not looking at the fullbacks. I think a sneak peek of the 5 subs impact I expect. I think it will actually be good for the starters, because once you know who the starters are, and for clean sheets, if they're getting subbed at 60, 70 minutes and locking in the clean sheet before the clean sheet wipe, they're also then guaranteed to start the next game. So I think as long as you know that the fullback you've got is the starter, you're going to actually see them start more games because of the rest they're going to get, and they're going to be subbed when they're in the red zone and they're winning games. So I think that's going to be a big change. Yeah. So I do actually wonder, whereas like centre-backs, you might not see them sub in. So you may see that if they don't play 1 week, you'll get your bench player. But the thing with fullbacks will be that I think you'll have to make calculated decisions. And if they play 90 in the league, then play 90 in midweek, you have to ask yourself, they're probably not going to start, and they will sub in for 30. And you're going to have to make a bold call of benching like a Cancelo or a Robertson, thinking they're going to be rested but play minutes on a cameo, and hope they don't return on the cameo and start a different defender you have. So for me, that's what I'll be looking to do. Is I'll probably still go for fullbacks, but I'll take a very high risk approach of trying to predict when they're not going to start based on the midweek games, and actually bench those fullbacks from these top teams in that week. And it might blow up in my face, but that's kind of what I'm expecting to be the impact. Whereas I guess you're going the safer route, which is centre-backs.
Well, I think I'll have a balance.
You'll get your stub.
I actually think I'll have a balance. I think there'll certainly be I would expect, if I was doubling up, I wouldn't go wing back. I'd go centre-back, wing back, probably, for example. You know, I think that's probably the way I would do it. And maybe I might split my defence up with a combination of centre-backs and wing-backs rather than, you know, rather than just lumping on what we've done in the past and aiming for all the attacking, you know, the attacking assets or the more attacking assets. Gabe,
I think the key will be, so the key will be, I think just for me, the key will be, like something like Chelsea, like they're great here, but they've lost their whole back line. And we need to see who they buy in the defense and see how they shape up and if they change formation. Brighton, when or if they lose Cucurella, that's another consideration. So I think we're going to have to use the context of the summer window and the preseason. And there's a lot of exciting research to come in the month ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have got this little devil has Sanchez in my first draft at this moment, goalkeeper wise. You know, looks like it might be another trip down memory lane. Or Raya, even. There we go. There's another one who I might think about. Gabe, on the defensive wise for Hub, again, I'll just read them out and then I'll put the comparison up. So Hub defence wise has Liverpool first, City second, Chelsea third, Brighton fourth, and Palace. There we go. Palace popping up there. Yeah, we won't worry about the bottom. So let's put the summary up and let's have a look at this. So we've got, I'm afraid, City and Liverpool first, second. So that goes our first equal first. So that again goes back to your thing, Gabe. You know, do you just lump on attack against defence, or do you split it? It's hard to say. Chelsea third, Spurs fourth, Brighton fifth, Arsenal sixth, then Palace. Okay, Villa, Brentford, West Ham, Wolves. Okay, that's the teams who the combination of fixture difficulty quite likes defensive wise. What's your perspective on this, Gabe? There's some interesting, possibly cheaper options just that little bit further down is my immediate thought.
I mean, the first two surprises that jump out to me is how highly Hub have Brighton ranked. 4 is really high, and then we do recognize that they could have some good fixtures, but 4 is quite high. That's actually quite encouraging, especially to start the season with a goalkeeper like Sanchez. That makes a lot of sense, given that your FDR Mariner ranks them at, what is that, 6. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing on the flip side is I'm surprised how low you have Newcastle ranked. I kind of side with Hub on this ranking, and I know their home form was much better than their away form, and that might be why, because it's combined here. But I think Newcastle will be moving from strength to strength, and they're going to prove to be, I think, a little bit better than what this FDR indicates. Still not going in on them early, like we had talked about before, because I do think that the fixtures aren't great. But
they've just signed Botman, right?
Yes.
So they're strengthening their defense as well.
Yes. That's fair enough. Yeah. And of course, our fixture difficulty, remember what we always say, you have to take our numbers with a pinch of salt because they're based on numbers. You've got to think about what has changed with these numbers. So, okay. So, like you say, Botman, they've got, they look like they've just signed Pope as well. So, they're clearly strengthening up. But I look at the fixtures and I think Newcastle at this moment are probably a watch. My immediate perspective. So I'm not saying I think maybe it is low, Gabe. I think I tend to agree with you, but it is what it is. So I think we'll see how it develops. I mean, look, Palace. I like the look of Palace. A Palace defender, possibly. Guay, if that's how you say him. I quite like the look of someone like him. Just interested to know how much he's going to be. That's going to be the problem. Obviously, Brighton goalkeepers worth consideration. Villa might be some value in there. Spurs fourth, Nima. What's your perspective on Spurs defence? Rotation-tastic, I think, given context.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it is interesting. I do really like the idea of starting with a cheap Spurs centre-back if they're cheaper than the fullbacks. The fullbacks, there's some new signings who've come in, obviously, like Perisic. They're also, we've got Sessegnon. We saw a bit of a sneak peek into what he's capable of at the end of last season. And there's still more to come yet. So they are really looking to strengthen. They brought in Basuma, which will shield the back as well. So I think with the kind of winning mentality that Conte has, I feel like a lot of his signings are geared towards winning something now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs are aiming to win something or some kind of silverware next year. And I don't think Conte is building for like a 5-year plan. He's building to win in the next couple of years. And if it implodes, he'll get out and leave some stroppy players like Richarlison and some aging players like Perisic behind, and a spine of Kane and Son who will then leave. But not to, obviously be rude about them. I'm just saying he wants to win and he doesn't really care what happens in 5 years to Spurs. So he's not looking for the long term. So with that in mind, that makes me actually very keen on them. And especially defensively, I'd love to see if I can squeeze in Son and a defender at the start of the season. I'm worried about how they'll be priced, and the fullbacks, I'm really worried about how much Conte will rotate them. So if one of the centre backs is 5 million or less, that would almost be like a lock in my team at 5 million for a Spurs defender. Like I don't know if we're going to see that this year, where they make mistakes like 4.5 million Ben White and 4.7 million Doherty, and you're not going to find out 4.3 million Ben Davies, and
No.
I think maybe they've learned from that a bit.
I think the only problem is if it's so obvious, then everyone will be on them as well. So sometimes it's one of those ones where I think we'll see as the prices come out. But I think there's potentially some value kicking around in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th.
I think Palace is interesting. So like if Gahey is very well priced, I could see myself going for like Gahey. Me personally, like I want a 4 million defender. So even if they happen to be from Notts County, Bournemouth, or Southampton, if I think they'll start and they start every preseason game, I will have them in my Gameweek 1 team. Like that's gold dust. Like just if I can find a 4 mil defender that actually plays, who's last on my bench that I never need to call on, but they might actually start, get a random fluky return, and then everyone buys them.
Yeah,
that's like dreamland right there. Like Simicast last season, I remember he obviously started for a few weeks, and then even once Robbo was back, it was like, me and my transfer trends. He was brought in by like a few 100,000 people, went up in price on the Monday, Tuesday, and then he was sold by a few 100,000 people by the Friday and went back down in price. So like, it's just hilarious. Like the casuals will just see, they'll go to transfer out an injured player or a suspended player or someone who blanked around game week 2 or 3. They'll be like, who the fuck is this 4.5 million defender who's got 30 points? And they will be piling in. They'll be like, I need to take a -4 to buy Haaland. I fucked up my team. I can't get to him. -8, get Haaland in. Oh, look at this 4 million player who got 30 points. He's never going to start again. So for me, I want to just get those bandwagons and catch those price rises and get out when everyone buys them after they've been dropped. That's just something I like to do. They don't have to be from a good team when they're 4 million. I just want them to play.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see that, but I mean, look, you've got to promise us that when you're on the matchup show, you do that section, because that's gold dust listening to your rants every week on transfer trends. We absolutely, Gabe and I,
we've missed that. And honestly, it's incredible. Like when the game loads, sometimes I go to the game and I just look at the top transfers, and the first game hasn't even kicked off, right? And I'm seeing people sell a player who was suspended for the game that they didn't sell him for, and now they're fucking selling him for the following game week when the guy is back. And I'm like watching loads of them sell him. FPL then removes his flag in about 24 hours, and now he's the most transferred in player of the game week. And I'm thinking like, what game are we playing? Like, who are these people? And yet so many of them will still finish above us in rank. And I think that's the infuriating and fun part about FPL. It's like no matter what you do, some idiot will still beat you, who just kind of fucking winged it the whole season, while we're here looking at all the data. It's hilarious, honestly. Like,
well, yeah. Well, anyway, we're definitely doing that this year. And the other thing that we're doing this year, as always, is we're using our resident coach's brain. And it's over to you now, Gabe. You've had to wait for this. We've had so much to talk about. And I was meant to be going to work, but I'm going to have to delay it now. Because I'm still here. Anyway, I'm working late tonight. That's all right. Should we have a look at the first few teams, Gabe? I don't think it's going to take an awfully long time, because I don't think there's an awful lot of interest initially in some of them, but I think it's always good to just sense check ourselves. So shall I put them up onto the screen and let you go?
Yeah.
So first one is Leeds. So you're going to have a look at Leeds. In fact, you're looking at the first 5 teams, and you're going to. Do you want to explain what you're going to do for the podcast?
Yeah. So I'm creating a graphic for each team just to kind of highlight some strengths and weaknesses and specific stats that I look at. So this is a matchups analysis. Now the nice thing about these graphics is they're kind of like a living documents. This is just an initial look, an initial assessment. As we learn more, then I'll be putting more or different information as we know. Like for and well, I'll be going kind of from 17 to first place. So even though we say that there isn't much interest in these teams, we know we do have fans of these teams in the chat, and then that'll be watching the show. So no offense there, and please give us as much information as you have if you think that something could be added here. So just starting, and we are going to go through these quite quickly, just because they are kind of bottom of the table teams, and we are already an hour and 35 in. So let's see if we can do this in less than 10 minutes. There are 5 of them, so 2 minutes apiece. So the first matchup here is Leeds. Yeah, I thought, like, from the expected stats point of view, Norwich was the only other team with expected goals conceded non-penalty of more than 70. So that, just for comparison, Norwich is a good comparison for Leeds in terms of defense, which is obviously not good. However, the Leeds do have a few signings. They have a center mid and a right back that could help there. I'll get to those kind of towards the end, and as I get to the tactical focus. From chances created, chances conceded point of view, they conceded the most chances from the center, 4.26 per game. I think we all remember that from last season. And one of only 4 teams to concede 90 plus big chances in 21-22. Again, just kind of talking about their defensive frailties. A lot of that obviously was tactical. Even when Jesse Marsch came in, the defense, well, it still took a while, and I don't think he had the right pieces in place, and there should be quite a bit of movement. We know Rafinha should be going to Chelsea already, so I'll talk about that movement in just a second. From a shots perspective, they're about bottom of that table in most shots categories, and with similar production to Brighton as far as the underlying stats go. But I think that Leeds have a lack of presence in the box, and especially in the 6 as well, because they have this pressing system, but they don't have players that can play quick and accurate balls and time them well into runners when they do win the ball. And I think that lack of penetration costs them. From NetxG, I do know their NetxG is the only one that I know at the moment. The rest is in development. But they're generally equally likely to score 0 goals as they are to score 2 goals. Always 1 goal is typically the most likely, but they're also most likely to concede double what they score from a NetxG perspective. So again, we have to look at their signings. They signed Mark Rocca from Bayern Munich. He's a central midfielder. They signed Rasmus Christensen from Salzburg and Brendan Aronson from Salzburg. Christensen's a right back, and Aronson he's a center attacking mid, but he can also play on the wing. I wonder if if they're thinking of a Rafinha replacement with him, if they will play him out on the wing. And then just to from a tactical perspective, Jesse Marsch Leeds played mostly a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-4-1 last season. Bamford's coming back. Gelhardt seems to be, developing in quite a promising way. So I wonder if Marsch will move to the 4-2-2-2 he employed at Salzburg, kind of tuck the wingers more inside to help the press, and that would actually help a player like Brendan Aronson. If he's tucked more inside, he's more of his natural position of center attacking mid. So I think that could be a direction they go. But again, I have no idea right now. It's way too early. It's just a conjecture.
Okay, so that's the first one. So that's Leeds.
So that one's 4 minutes. So
that's all right. Yeah.
I'm gonna put 20-second timer for the next one.
Put the timer on. These will be a lot quicker. Everton will definitely be quicker. They're next. Hampered by what's that?
How come you've got Chelsea's manager on it?
I'll tell you in just a second. So when we get to the tactical focus, I'll tell you why Thomas Tuchel is next to some fireworks there in the graphic. So their expected stats, they were, let's see. I mean, there's really not much to note. Everton were quite bad. Towards the end of the season, they got better at home, which I thought was good to note. And I think it goes to the tactical focus, which I'll speak later. They had poor finishing. They had injuries kind of all over the field and midfield up front. Calvert-Lewin was injured for a long time. So they had an expected goals of 48.32, but their expected goals on target, so their shots, basically the XG after the shot is 39. So that's quite a big difference of almost nine there. And I think they were obviously hampered by those injuries. From a creativity perspective, the lack of Calvert-Lewin led to the second fewest chances created from the center, only 2.18 chances from the center per game, not good. From a shots perspective, we look at Pickford. He was one of 5 keepers to face an expected goals on target conceded of over 50, which basically means that he faced kind of high quality shots, more quality shots than most of the keepers in the league. And this leads to the next stat, which is one of only 3 goalkeepers to save 20 or more big chances. I believe Pickford saved exactly 20 big chances last season. So he had a rough start to the season. His XGP was quite low. It was in the negative. And then I think with the change in culture, he started to change as well. And that, to speak to that change in culture, we get to the tactical focus. And so I wrote here, Lampard is not one known for his tactics. Instead, at the end of the season, he harnessed a dormant culture of emotion, aggressiveness, and shithousery. They would look to induce chaos. So on that front, so this is tactics. I believe culture is a part of tactics. That's just my personal opinion, and that's why the image I have here is the fireworks that Everton fans or the city, or I don't know who it was, but that they set off in next to Chelsea's hotel room, and this was at 2:30 in the morning. So the fireworks went on for a while, and it kept the Chelsea players up. And this is part of this culture that I think Lampard is breeding. He said, look, I don't know anything about tactics, but I know some shithousery, so let's go with that. And I think the Everton fans have responded. I think the Everton players have responded. And I'm actually excited to see a little bit more of that in the coming season.
Okay, all right. So
that was good. 2.5 minutes.
Oh,
We're getting better.
This won't take very long. It's Southampton.
Southampton won't take very long. I don't think we have any Southampton fans here either, so I will just rip through this one. I found it interesting that they had similar stats, like expected stats, to Leicester, but in a bad way, in that they're bottom 5 in most expected stats. But they scored 19 fewer goals than Leicester did. Southampton only scored 43 goals, and they conceded 13 more non-penalty goals. They conceded 65 non-penalty goals, Southampton did. So I thought that was, from an expected point of view, they underperformed quite significantly, but I think there's a tactical reason for that, and I'll get to that. From a creativity perspective, they're the 3rd lowest big chance conversion, 32%, and the 2nd most big chances conceded, obviously second to Norwich, with 99 big chances conceded. From a tactical perspective, and the image I have here is a heat map of their chances, of Southampton's chances created, and I have a kind of like a red area right in the middle that shows it's really blank, and Southampton suffer from a lack of penetration, and that's what I wanted to show with that image. They're a pressing team without penetrating passers. They don't have passers that can win the ball from the counter press and play just kind of measured through balls into strikers that are running. What they have is they have players that can serve the ball from wide areas and so on and so forth. But when you press high, you win the ball. You're not really in a position to serve it yet because players aren't in position or anything like that. You need some like short passes to allow the runs to develop, or to exploit the holes in the defense that exist right when you win the ball. So I just think they're a poorly constructed team, and I think they're kind of like a wait and see to see how they strengthen and what kind of new talent they bring in. 2 minutes?
Right.
Tell me it was 2 minutes, Nima.
It was 2 minutes and 15 seconds or 10 seconds.
Yeah, all right. Let's keep going.
Fantastic. We're whizzing through these.
Getting better. Okay, the next team we have here is Villa, and for me, Aston Villa is kind of one of the more interesting teams because they were able, and I have no idea how they landed this player, but Kamara is a central midfielder who's really talented. So that's definitely a feather in the cap for Villa. From expected stats point of view, they slightly overperformed their expected goals on target. So their shots, so they had 46.25 and they scored 52 goals. And I'm wondering, those Coutinho finishes probably played a role there when he had that short period when he went on a tear and he scored some really nice goals. And then they underperformed on the other side. The expected goals on target conceded with 47.7 xG/OTC and conceding 54 goals. And I wonder, did we see the same Martinez last year as we did the season prior? I think it's obvious that we didn't, but I'm not sure how much of an effect that had. We'll get to the goalkeeper metric here in just a moment. From a creation point of view, Villa very much favor the left side, creating 53 more chances on the left than the right. So it's 149 chances created from the left and 96 created from the right. And if we look at the players they have on the left, they have Dean, Coutinho, Ramsey, Buendia. Buendia plays both. He'll go left and right, but when you look at his heat map, it still favors that left-hand side. And Watkins, who also favors the left-hand side. So from a tactical point of view, I think this is going to continue with Aston Villa. So we're going to want to look at the defensive, the right back, whoever they have, the opposing team has defensively on the right side. But I do expect the zonal matchups to favor the left side for Villa this season. The goalkeeper, yes. So it went from expected goals prevented for Martinez, went from a positive 3.7 in 2020 to 2021 to a negative 4.8 in 21-22. That's a minus 8.5 goal swing. So I think there's a lot of blame that can be kind of left at Martinez's feet. I know Arsenal were criticized heavily for letting him go when people thought Martinez was the second coming. Now Arsenal have Ramsdale and Villa have Martinez, and they're probably both kind of happy with their goalkeepers, but Martinez will have to clean it up a little bit next season. Tactically, just to show kind of like that left side, they play a 4-3-3 with Digne involved in the build-up and Cash biding his time on the weak side. So Cash will kind of hold back. But when you see, there have been a couple games when Cash hauled, and that's when the left side gets stagnant and the opposing team kind of shifts quite hard to their right side. Then that right side opens up for Villa, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Cash and Bailey really, I'd like to see the presence of Leon Bailey more this season, and I'd like to see them get more opportunities in the space created on that right hand side. Similarly to I'm thinking of Sergi Canos at the beginning of this past season for Brentford when he would make those runs on that side with him and Mbuma on that right side. I think Villa could do a little bit of the same thing by stacking the left and then penetrating the right if the left gets clogged. Sorry, I know that was a bit longer.
They had some more things of note to discuss, and they're looking good in the FDR, so we'll give you the 3.5 minutes there for Villa. By the way, just on Emi Martinez, I think I was at the Emirates when he lost quite convincingly to Arsenal, and I don't think he recovered from the chance of "you're just a shit Aaron Ramsdale." I think it got in his head. He looked pretty distraught at the time.
I will say I am curious about Emi Buendia as well as an asset. I'm curious to see how he's priced and if he will get more of a pivotal role kind of cemented in there as a creative hub, or if he will rotate with Coutinho. That's something to watch. But to finally get to Brentford here, I thought it was interesting. They scored 2 more big chances than Arsenal while creating 2 fewer big chances, and I thought this was a good opportunity to troll Nima just a little bit since we do talk about Arsenal so much. I thought I'd just throw him a little bit there.
We need to upload the laugh so that whenever we want to press the button. I'm gonna
Yes.
record it next time. But yeah, our starting two centre forwards got 9 league goals between them. I think it was Aubameyang and Lacazette. So yeah, it was an interesting season for our forward line.
I do expect that to change to Arsenal, but we'll get to the matchups for Arsenal obviously much later because they finished much higher than Brentford did. From a shots perspective, Brentford's were they were quite impressive. They were tied with Spurs for the fourth most shots in the six. I call it that metric like SIX there. Most of these stats are taken from Fantasy Football Scout, by the way. So they had 56 shots inside the six last season, which was quite a lot, same as Spurs. And only 8 fewer shots in the box than Spurs and United. So they had 317 shots in the box compared to 325 for Spurs and United. Tactically, Brentford turned their season around when they moved from the 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, however you want to characterize it, to a 4-3-3 system. I think this unlocked Eriksen. He moved around the field a little bit more. We see Eriksen's heat map there. On the left is his touch heat map. So you see the touches, you kind of like it's more heavily on the left-hand side. But when you look at his chance creation heat map on the right-hand side, it is spread more evenly, maybe even a little bit more chance creation on the right-hand side. So where he may show to build up play on the left, he really creates chances more from the right. And I think that dynamic is what makes a player like Wissa so interesting, Mariner. Because if Eriksen is creating from the right, Wissa may have space on that left because that Eriksen cleared out. So that's another dynamic to watch in preseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say I quite like Brentford. I think I'm a bit worried about second season syndrome, as always. But that said, hopefully they won't have the same amount of injuries that some teams suffered with on that sense. But yeah, I mean, players like Visser I really like. Yeah, thanks, Gabe. That's the first 5. Was it 5? You did?
5.
Yeah.
First 5.
I think it was. Perfect. So we'll keep going with those every week. So, guys, we can take a few questions if there are any. And if there aren't, then we can just bugger off.
Yeah, I was going to say, for any of the people on Twitter who send questions in, we'll answer them in next week's episode. I don't think it's going to change your life or your team's life anytime soon till the 5th of August launch. So we'll get to those questions. There was about 3 or 4 of them. We'll just pile them into next week's show. But yeah, we got big stuff coming next week. We're going to look at some team drafts, team structure. We're going to look at values, how to spread your budget. And we're going to use Fantasy Football Fix for that. So I think it's quite an exciting time to say that at Net That Haul, we are truly platform agnostic. Today, we've seen stuff from Hub and Scout. We have Fix next week. We have memberships to all the tools, and we just love
app.
FPL.
We got Playmaker
app. Yeah, like we just love everything. So the only thing that I shit on is official FPL, which I'm sure I'll continue to do with my rants next season. But that can come when we look at what's new when they launch the game. I'll have a few things to pick apart. But yeah, I think if there's any questions in the live chat, do let us know. Other than that, like, I think we'll probably get out of here. The one big announcement is, since we've moved podcast platform, I think it was seamless. So hopefully no one noticed, and our subscribers are still there on Spotify, Apple, and Google, and elsewhere. But the big change is that we can actually upload videos now to Spotify. So anyone who does watch the pod, or listen to the pod, I should say, you can now actually watch it if you're using Spotify. So I'll be uploading the video to Spotify tonight, and it will be in normal audio format on all the other podcast directories. But they've recently added star ratings to Spotify, which we didn't have before. So it's the time where I come and beg you again to please, if you enjoy Net That Haul, leave a 5-star rating, because there aren't enough ratings to show an average star rating yet. And thankfully, 25 of you did it on Apple. So if you also want to leave a review on Apple, if you've got an Apple device, on Apple Pod or Spotify, help the cause and get us some reviews, please. But yeah, I think we have a question from Ballroom Jam that we'll take before we get out of here. So what new players in the PL excite you the most? I think, why don't we start with you, Gabe, with your coaching lens? Is there anyone who signed so far that really excites you or stands out to you that might change the way their team play?
I mean, if we're talking about players coming in from other leagues, it's Boubacar Kamara, the central midfielder for Villa. I think he's just such an incredible talent. I mean, Holland is the obvious one, of course. But this player is really, really talented, and it was quite the coup for Villa to get them. So they'll be going from like a Douglas Luiz and a John McGinn situation to this kind of classy player, and I think it's going to have maybe perhaps the biggest effect on a team. Whereas Holland he'll score more goals, he'll do more things. I think Villa could be most improved because of what that player brings to the midfield. So that doesn't say about FPL, right? Was it an FPL question, or was it just Premier League in general?
No, I think we can take your Premier League answer. Not to troll my United friends, but it has to be Tyrell Malacia. You know, the best wing back that the Dutch national team has. I'm sure he'll probably start as a deputy to Luke Shaw, but Luke Shaw breaks down a lot, and I can see him within the next season or two displacing them and becoming the new number one left wing back at United. But you know, it's great they've been able to get a player where they're going to pay 5 million over 3 years in installments a year. So, you know, wait for Lyon to agree a deal and then swoop in and buy another Dutch player. At this point, I have some United friends who say they might as well have just changed the badge to like the Dutch national team badge or the Ajax badge. I think the plan for the future is bring in all the Dutch players and pray. But good luck for United. Sorry if any of our listeners today are supporters of United and suffering, but it is what it is. In terms of players that excite you, Mariner, is there anyone from an FPL point of view?
You know what? You know what I do with this. You know my view on new players coming into the leagues. The first thing I do is I look at their stats in the old leagues, then I compare the leagues, and then I work out how much harder the Premier League is compared to the league where they came from, and then I make my decision, and I haven't done it yet. One thing I will say is, if you recall, Gabe, last season, I said the Premier League was 66% more difficult than the Championship. Tony scored 30 goals in the Championship. He scored 11 in the Premier League. I was bang on. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to. I'm going to generalize this. And I'm going to say that you have to consider the difficulty of the league where they came from. And then you have to think about how quick it is for them to integrate into that team and their performance on the basis of that. So Haaland's obvious, right? It's so obvious. It's a bit boring to say it, but it's probably the only one which excites me right now because I haven't looked at any of the others.
I think for me, not new to the Premier League, but with the fixtures Arsenal have to start with in the first 8 weeks or so, if somebody like Jesus costs 8 mil or 8.5 mil even, which he might, that could be a very exciting option for me to differentiate from people, to find a way to squeeze him in while others are trying to kind of stack themselves with the City Liverpool defense, Salah, Haaland's son. But he's not new to the Premier League, obviously. And
it's not so new, but, you know, I think we'll probably see Diaz at Liverpool coming more into his own going forwards as well. He's one of the players who's right on my radar, but he's not necessarily a new player. But I think given the fact Mane's gone now, I think there's going to be a change potentially. I think he might get more minutes. So I quite like the look of Diaz as well. I quite like the look of doubling up on them actually. But
you can't help yourself. We'll get out of here before it hits 2 hours. I think all our season launches, compared to last season, there's probably like at least half an hour less than that one. So we've made good progress. Obviously, when the season starts, they'll be a bit shorter and snappier, but we've got 5 weeks to look at all the matchups, all the FDRs, lessons we've learned. It was nice to do a review. We didn't get to meet at the end of last season all together, and people were traveling and all over the world. So hopefully you can connect with us next week from the Philippines if your signal's good enough, Mariner. And otherwise, it'll
be my attempt to run the gauntlet of the dodgy signal next week, won't it? Yeah, you'll have to run the show because I'll probably just keep dropping on and off. But it's more fun in the Philippines. That's all I'll say to you, boys.
Yeah, good to see FPL DG Boy 88 as well. Do check out the VOD after, and please, guys, as we head out, let us know what you think about the new sea shanty jingle, the new intro and outro for Net That Haul. Smash that like button, please. Hit subscribe. You know, if you're new to the channel, if it's your first stream, And do please go check out the new podcast directories with the videos on Spotify, which I'm really excited about. And next week, we'll tell you more about the membership perks for YouTube and the Discord server we're looking to set up for everyone in the Haulers community. But other than that, it's lovely to see everyone in the chat. Thanks for sticking with us at this late hour, wherever you are, or early hour if you're where Chris is. Yeah. Good luck getting to the office now, Chris. But thanks, everyone. Yeah, so see you next week. And I'm just finding the new intro. Okay, it says 22, 23. So I'll take us out here, guys. See you later.